thought that I was going to die, and I didn't want to. I just couldn't snap out of what this was.
To passers-by on this summer day in Glasgow, Erin McCauley is like any young woman.
To the world, I'm a very organised, sociable person, and a very probably outgoing person. But I guess that's the scary thing about having an eating disorder, that those two things are like contradict each other in a way. That I'm always the first person that, would be dancing on the tables, up for a song or an adventure. But I guess deep down there's other things that maybe I don't always show.
Living with an eating disorder has been a decade-long battle for 25-year-old Erin.
I was quite young, and at that stage I eventually got diagnosed with bulimia. So it wasn't necessarily for me losing weight. I just had a really bad relationship with my body and food.
Erin's home life was complex. By the time she was entering her final school years, she was living alone and hiding her illness.
The only thing I could control in my life was what I ate and what I didn't, and also I now understand that it's how I coped with my emotions. That was really isolating, because if I told somebody the situation I was in, they would then find out that I had an issue. And still at that point, maybe a little part of me knew that I shouldn't be doing this, but it was like an addiction. It absolutely has consumed me.
At university, things got worse, and when she did reach out for help, Erin felt she was dismissed.
I knew that I'd had a couple of scares that made me realise that I wasn't all right, but they made me feel that I wasn't thin enough yet, so I made myself thinner. I was told that it's highly unlikely that there would be a space for me in an eating disorder unit. They'd be highly unlikely to get into the system. So in the meantime, here's an antidepressant, try and eat. And saying try and eat to somebody with an eating disorder is a way to get better is just not right. And I think I just felt really frustrated and really angry. And I felt like, well, what do I need to do then? If I'm going to make myself iller, I will.
Dr. Stephen Anderson is a clinical psychologist and expert in treating eating disorders. He says Erin's story is far too common.
There can be a perception that eating disorder services only see people who are very low weight. And because of the lack of awareness of eating disorders, you might see a health professional who doesn't know much about them and thinks that you need to have a very low weight or abnormal blood tests to have an eating disorder. And that's not the case, but unfortunately it gives the person themselves the impression that they're not unwell, they're not sick enough.
Dr. Anderson believes that while staff do an amazing job, the system itself is coming under major pressure and needs urgent reform.
Often we are not able to provide early intervention, which is where we can make a real significant difference and prevent people becoming more entrenched in an illness where they need higher intensity treatment later on. And we know that there are significant waiting lists within services at present, which could mean that people are becoming more and more unwell while waiting to be seen.
Statistics published this week illustrate the scale of the challenge being faced in Scotland. The number of teenage girls aged 15 to 19 who have been treated for an eating disorder more than doubled over the last 5 years. For women aged 25 to 29, the rise over the same time period was almost 30%, whilst eating disorders across men and women rose by more than a quarter. Some of the most significant rises took place during the COVID lockdown, which experts now agree had a major impact on people with eating disorders.
I remember just at the start of lockdown ultimately begging my GP for support, and felt that I could have just hit my head off a brick wall because I was wanting support. I got really, really ill during lockdown, and I think that there was one day where I was in the house and The mental aspect had got to me, and I just felt that I had totally surrendered to anorexia. I felt that I was scared and I was terrified, but I didn't want to express that.
Despite these challenges, Erin has received help from her employers and specialist services.
I have done a significant amount of recovery and healing. I understand my eating disorder, understand it. I know now the roots of it, and I am so much better than I've ever been, that I can manage if things get challenging. I don't engage in the same behaviours.
For some, the COVID pandemic was just another challenge in a lifelong battle.
It takes away everything, because it becomes, and as sad as this is to say, it becomes your best friend, it becomes your identity. That's who you are.
Tommy's lived with eating disorders for nearly 20 years following the death of his mother.
That's when things escalated out of control. I started exercising for 15 hours a day. I was gradually cutting down on my food, really to the point that I was virtually not eating at all, and I was going back and forward to the doctor for 1997 right through to 2000, basically telling him that I was suffering from grief. I just couldn't cope with the loss of my mum. I didn't feel that I wanted to eat and things. And he just basically kept giving me antidepressants and said to me, come back and see me in 3 months, and this went on for 3 years.
He says being a man made it even harder to be accepted for help.
I think a lot of the time I realised that it was mostly some in my family that kind of was more stigmatising towards it and discriminatory, because they thought I was just looking for attention. I was basically doing this all to myself, and they kind of seen me as a danger and things like that, which was really, really difficult.
At his sickest, Tommy lost feeling in his legs, suffered 2 heart attacks and was placed in a coma. Still, speaking openly about his eating disorder and getting treatment terrified him.
It controls your every movement, the food that you eat, it basically belittles you. You feel that you've got to basically control your whole life, because it's kind of like a safety blanket. For me, it was because of grief for myself, it was a way of controlling my life, because the rest of my life felt out of control. For me, the way I put it, it's like a demon controlling your life, because it generally takes away everything from you. You isolate yourself from family, friends. For me, it was difficult to move on with my recovery, because I was worried who I would be without the eating disorder, as sad as that is, and it changed everything about me. I would lash out at family and friends and things like that were trying to help me, because for me, I believe that you can get all the help in the world, but you've actually got to want the help and move forward with it. And for me, that was what it was actually doing to me. It was stopping me getting that help.
Even when help is provided, the road to recovery can be an incredibly challenging one for many.
It becomes very quickly stuck, and it can get to the point where the person is afraid of giving up the eating disorder. If I go for help, you're going to take this away but not give me anything else in return to help me with these difficult emotions or these difficult situations that I'm in.
Tommy now works with organisations to help others suffering from eating disorders. Helping people to open up is a major tool in treatment.
For me, that was the biggest actual thing to move forward with my recovery, was actually speaking about it. It breaks down those barriers and things like that, and all those kind of things that you're bottling up and holding on to, because an eating disorder, and I believe, thrives in secrecy, and part of the thing to take back that secrecy is actually open up about it and speaking about it. That's when you start to move on with recovery, and that was the biggest step for me, really.
Erin and Tommy are 2 examples of thousands in Scotland, and whilst their recovery continues, both say they feel fortunate to have a future they can look forward to.
My life's absolutely great. Everything that the eating disorder had taken away from me, my family, my friends, managing to go out and enjoy meals with my wife, getting back to the gym and having a healthy relationship with exercise where I can take it or leave it, which is, I feel, the way recovery actually should be. You should be able to enjoy your food.
I think there will be challenging parts of my recovery. Am I fully recovered? No. I've still got some things to work on, but I know what they are, and I think that knowing that is good.